Welcome to Coffee with the Pastors in November. Hard to believe that this year just keeps rolling along, but it is exciting, and we're glad to have you joining us for conversation and for coffee. If you've got a beverage of choice here, you can grab it and just join us as we have some time to talk about what's going on at Trinity, give some updates, and as I like to say, get the inside scoop from behind the scenes of all of the ministries that are happening here. And so especially today, we're going to get the inside scoop because we've invited Ethan Miller, who is the chair of our call committee, to join us this morning as we talk about what's going on with regard to calling another pastor at Trinity. So Ethan, I'm aware of the fact that as pastors, we kind of know what this process is, but for a lot of the folks that are with us this morning, they may be going, well, wait a second, why don't we have a pastor yet? And what is this call committee and call process thing? So can you just talk us through that a little bit?
Absolutely. Happy to be with you guys this morning and to talk about this, to fill in with the whole call committee process and what that is, because it was new to me to begin with. When Pastor Dan had contacted me back in July of this year and said, hey, Pastor Kevin, because even dating back to that, we sort of saw the unfolding of Pastor Kevin's, rise to the bishopness and like seeing it all kind of work, like, oh, this is pretty cool. Oh, whoa, our pastor's leaving. Okay, now what does this mean? Now it's even just from the outside as just a congregation member. And so then when, Pastor Dan contacted me and said, hey, would like you to be the chair of the call committee, I thought, well, we're pretty incredible honor. And then my next question was, what is a call committee? And hearing of that, it was like, well, it's much like a recruitment process, what you do for interviewing for jobs in a position, which I've been through many times as within members of a school. But it's more than that. It's, not just like, hey, we have this position, let's fill it in. Because with business or organizations, schools, or whatever, you're hiring somebody, if it doesn't really work out, then you're like, well, let's just axe this person and go find somebody else. Not such a good look if that happens in the church. And we have to make sure that if we make a hire, we're not just hiring for the temporary, we're gonna hire for long term, and or I say not just hiring for the temporary, but for the legendary and what's to come. And so getting the whole parameters of what that is then led to then our first meeting in August with the Bishop Andrea and the church council to go over what the call process is, the steps that we need to take, and then after that initial meeting, then which basically with the church council telling us that, hey, we are going to give you guys the power to make this decision, and then we'll be supportive of what the work that you do. We then met out immediately after that and started introducing ourselves. And I tell you what, like, as being a representative of these incredible individuals who have dedicated their time and efforts and talents and energy to this process, really shows how deeply rooted the belief and value system of our church is, regardless of background, regardless of experience or situation, circumstances. And so we were able to sort of find this, like, hey, we all have this love of Trinity, and also knowing and recognize that we're in a really, really cool spot moving forward to do something impactful, not just as the hiring of this new pastor, this new position, but to also take a look at what we do as a church and what new roles and responsibilities that we can partake. And I came home all fired up after that first meeting with my wife Becky, and I said, we've been members of Trinity for years now, and so ever since before we got married, had kids, and so on. And that, like, we have a chance to do something that's going to leave massive ripple effects, not just for the people in our congregation, but then also for just Mason City and North Iowa, and being that hub, that staple, that rooted church that can help support others. And so after that initial meeting was, okay, we need to start going what's called the MSP, which is a ministry site profile, which is like, for those that might not be sure, it's like basically a dating profile for churches.
Yes.
Here are my interests. Here's what I think we're good at. Here's the things I like to do in my spare time. No, but it's basically filling out, like, what is the demographic? What is the need? What is the sort of the entire description of what this position is going to be? and also taking the roles from, maybe shifting some roles from Pastor Kathy and shifting some roles from Pastor Dan, also adding of new staff members and what they're going to do. And the theme was pretty common from how we can reevaluate these roles to essentially create followers of Christ from the beginning of life all the way through the end of life. And if we sort of think of it like an assembly line, as they start to move through from, baptism to their youth education, to then also their middle school education, to then high school, post high school, young adult life, while they're in adult life, and then also moving towards the later end of their life. And I think that got us as a community really excited to have those conversations. But it's also conversations that were very, challenging and meaningful, because everybody has a different experience and idea of what the church means to them, how they see it, because we're framed by our own environment, our own experiences, and how we see things. And to say, well, like the experience of somebody who's been a church member for 30 plus years, or somebody who is, raising young kids and families within the church, and the experience that they're going to have. And that was as really cool, as that we've had a nice foundation of respect and listening to get positive feedback and interaction within those people of the call committee. And so the first meeting in August, which leads to then the next one, and going through this ministry chart profile, examples from what had happened when they did, Pastor Dan's calling, or to moving up into senior pastor, but then also like how it's changed, and to be on the inside and actually see, because I mean, as a regular churchgoer, as a regular, attendee and participant in things that we can do, whether it be, singing worship, my wife's on cabinet, and I've help out in any way we can with our schedules. But that's actually get the sort of inside of like, oh, this is what's going on. This is what's happening. This is a direction that we're going into. And from there, I was able to then take this ministry site profile and divvy up some individual time as far as what they think, as far as what are our strengths, what are some areas of growth, where do we see then the need of this next position. And then we all come together and say, and comparing notes. And to do that individually and then come back as a collective whole was really good, because it gave everybody a voice and a seat at the table to share what they feel, and everybody was heard. And I mean, the commitments of it, we had people that are coming on Zoom, come back from the soccer tournaments in Des Moines, they're jumping on this thing. And our meetings were not just like, hey, let's sit here and hang out for 15, 20 minutes and then let's move on. I mean, we're talking hour and a half, 2 hour plus meetings to really discuss and have those meaningful conversations, and to do the conversation justice, not just to go through it just for the sake of going through it. And then after we had solidified what our ideas and thoughts were regarding the profile, then Pastor Dan and I, and then in the weeks that followed, went then into then the Northeast Iowa Synod website, where how we would go through our own individual profile, not just rough draft, actually take it into the final draft stage, and took all the thoughts and ideas from our community members and then placed them into this document. It turned into a 17 pages, roughly 17-page document. And then that was then presented to the church council in October, and that was approved. And then we made a couple tweaks just with clerical things. And from that, then it was given to the Northeast Iowa Synod and was approved. And now it's receiving recommendations for potential candidates and individuals who are going to respond to this call. And already, from the person who's in charge of our church from our synod, in this specific, is going to be then meeting with us as a call committee to go through the steps as far as what this is when you're interviewing, or you're taking them through the screening or whatever we would call it, is then we're positioning ourselves to start looking at candidates here in the next month or so, and keep things moving down the track that we need to.
Yeah, it's quite a process, isn't it, though? And all that work on the front end of the church, really discerning and evaluating and thinking about, what is the future, who are we looking for, who are we, all those things take time and conversation. You've got a great committee, but it's a lot of work. Thank you so much for that.
Well, and you want to get it right and do it right. And not that we can't be perfect in any way, shape, or form, right? But how how present can we be with the process of that and saying, okay, here's what we're going to do with the information we have at hand. That's going to allow us to make the best decision moving forward. And when we have that information, that knowledge base, that's going to allow us to make calculated decisions and choices. And so like, okay, where do we line on this side of the, like, are we more this as a church, or do we lean more this? Okay. Are we looking for this sort of individual or to this sort of individual? What are the main strengths that we want this person to possess, or things that are like, hey, this is not really the top tier, but it matters. And those conversations and allowed us to sift through a lot of the different categories that are going to say, okay, here's the type of individual that we would want to be a part of our church family, knowing that's not just a position, but also it's going to be a part of then, how they're viewed within the church, but also like community and like, region wide. And so, yeah, it's been really fun to work with the incredible people. It's like, and being representatives of them. It was more me helping to facilitate, also with Pastor Dan's guidance too, but every single individual as a part of that call process has just as much stake or say in it as I had. And also for us to be representatives of our entire congregation. And that's important. That's not just like, hey, what do we think as the 7 to 8 people that are sitting inside this room, but we're representatives of a rather large body of individuals who want to continue to see our church moving forth, not just spiritually, but also what we do from, financial, stewardship, and also then all the other different sort of educational things that we have that we can continue to provide and be that, servant church, not just to us, but also to others.
I think you described so well, just kind of in that quick run through, what does make it a different kind of process than just, making a decision on a candidate and making a hire, right? That we really are talking about in church discernment, which is it's a different process, right? And it involves what you described so well of saying we're bringing a bunch of people that have been selected to think for the community and to discern and pray and listen, really a lot of listening to ourselves, to each other, to the Spirit in our midst, pulling that together in a very intentional kind of step-by-step sort of process, all of that with time kind of built into it to allow God to speak, right? And that in the end, that's very different than a lot of other hiring processes where you're looking at gifts and talents and you kind of know what your needs are, and then you're just making a decision and moving forward, right? Like this is a really strange, different kind of process compared to what most of us deal with in the rest of the world.
And even like in education, like, all right, we have a math position. You might get 2 people that apply. You say, okay, well, this person's going to fit our needs best. And
you pull the trigger. Yeah.
Let's hope things go the way it needs to. But then also like even how it's related to even the aftermath and continued whatever within COVID is, the hiring of individuals and businesses, and in some places they might just be looking just for a body. And that just is a sign of the times right now, but also that this is way different. And that when you're hiring, calling for a leadership position, you got to make sure that it fits, and not that other candidates and people that we have are wrong. It just is, they are the right person for a different question. And so we've got to make sure that we get the right person for the right question that we're asking for, who's going to come be a member of this. And also within the uniqueness of the church that we have, the size is the pastoral staff, and also having, because that matters as far as you guys and how you operate and work together, and the person who's going to be a fit as a team member and as a team player, and recognizing these different roles and responsibilities. Because if it's just a single, farm church that's out in the rural area, that one person is going to be the doer of everything, that is a little bit, you have to have this, person that's gonna be willing to say, hey, I can be an independent, I can go do this, versus like, hey, I'm a part of a team here, I'm a part of a family, I'm a part of like a much bigger picture than just, delivering a sermon on a Sunday.
So
I appreciated what you said too, in terms of the diversity of opinion just within the call committee too, that you have your different perspectives on the church and different expectations of what you need or want from a pastor. So I know we printed in the newsletter the names of the people on the call committee, but Dan, Pastor Dan, do you have you just lift up who all those people are?
Yeah, so we've got a team of 7, and it really is a diverse group in terms of their longevity at Trinity, their experience, their perspective on the world. Just thrilled with this group. It's Ethan is our chair, and then Allison Day, Gina Klinger, Napolitano Klinger, Noemi Cruz Orcutt, Dave Stein, Kim Pang, and Linda Hunt is our team. And like Ethan said, they've just been a great group. And we had really great conversations just filling out the MSP. It's really rich conversation to talk about who we are and kind of where God is leading us. And I think all of that's really positive. I'm glad it's not a 15-20 minute meeting, because I'd almost be more worried about that, I think, than taking 2 hours to do some of that stuff together.
So I think the bottom line is that it all takes time, but it sounds like you've been very faithful and just kind of moving along in that process. And we're now, in essence, in the next step, which is kind of waiting on some names and moving into potentially contacting some people in the next month or so. Is that correct? Kind of where we're at then?
Yeah, that's correct. So we're gonna meet with our representative from the Northeast Iowa Synod, who's going to work specifically with our church, our call committee, coaching us up on the process for what interviewing and working through the individual candidates, those who might be best fit, those who might be somebody we want to bring in, and what that all is going to look like. And it's been educational throughout it all. And I'm not going to sit here and say that, oh, yeah, we've got this all figured out. Well, in the beginning, for me personally, it felt like at times I was like, okay, I'm trying to figure this out as I go. I'm building the plane, or we're trying to fly it at the same time. But okay, this is what it looks like. Because then once you start having those conversations, having those meetings, and the framework in which you're going to operate, versus like, okay, here are the steps, here are the things we need to fill out, here are the roles, responsibilities, here are the most important tasks that we need to get before this next meeting. That usually once we met, it was like every 2 weeks, to then get this done with a goal of October to have this MSP finalized and supported by our church council, so that we can push this out, and that we're not trying to then busy ourselves through it. We were patient through it, but also we were very diligent, and that we weren't just going to sit back and say, we'll figure this out as we go. But it was we're very intentional with what it is that we're going to do, and the discussions we're going to have, and getting something solidified that is going to be a quality product that's going to be representative of all the people of our church and our area, that is going to be then attractive to somebody who wants to look at this place as making it their next call.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all of your time and your energy, because we know it takes a lot of that. And you are also a very busy person in your life, which maybe I probably should have started with that. Now that we've got you here, when we used to have fellowship coffee, it was really about telling your personal life story. So we don't have time for the whole life story, but yeah, just give us a little quick view of what you do and your family.
Okay, so I've been in Mason City for 18 years. I am the high school athletic director at Central Springs High School in Manly. I teach classes in character and leadership and elementary PE. And also I am a social emotional learning PLC department head, and also assistant girls track and field coach to my wife, Becky, who is the head girls track coach. She's built an incredibly successful program. And she's in Central Springs on the middle school campus, teaching middle school science. She is a model teacher leader on that campus. And then we have 2 girls that are about to, this is birthday week for us, because they both share a birthday on Veterans Day, November 11th. Greta will be 8. She's currently in 2nd grade at Central Springs in Manly, and Margot is going to be 5, and she is in the 2nd year of preschool program at Manly. My wife and I jokingly say, like, our kids are growing up, but then also next year we get a raise because we're no longer paying daycare, so our kids are going to school full time, and so that's a good thing. But then my wife also, with the call committee process, being involved at church, and from my standpoint, my wife is also in the women's cabinet at Trinity, and sings at worship as well at the 1045 a couple times a month. And then aside from that, with all of our kids' activities and things they do, I have another business that I operate, which is called Ethan Miller Mental Performance. And I consult with different professional teams, college teams, high school teams across the country, in their mindset and how they can help in turn to control the 6 inches between their ears, they can control the rest of their body as best as they can. So we are in positions of service in all that we do, and that is the way that we attack it. And there are a lot of things that we have learned throughout life that we can help shorten up somebody else's experience. And that when you are helping others, and I think I'll probably misquote, but I think it's maybe Teddy Roosevelt or somebody said that, there's no greater purpose than being in the service and living your life in the service of others. And so for us, is that's the way we've always viewed it. And on the days that we know sometimes it can be long, but the years go fast, and we know that the impact that we are trying to make each day, whether it be you're on the athletics field, you're in the classroom, you're in the community, where it may be, is that we have a greater purpose that we're trying to execute every single day. And so the opportunities that we have to do that, and the relationships that we have formed, and what we've been able to do through the course of our time here, is something that we feel very proud of and very fortunate, very blessed of. Even those moments where you stop and look around and say, "Wow, this is pretty cool." That what we get the chance to be a part of in this life. And that's where my mom always just say, like, growing up, like, she used to bust out in a song and be like, "Hey, this is happening, blah, blah, blah." She'd be like, "And give him the glory." Like, she'd sing that in the background. But that's a constant reminder as far as like what we've been given, and also like what we're given to others.
Wow, that's beautiful. Wow. Well, we certainly feel blessed by having you and your family at Trinity, and you in leadership in so many ways in the community, but certainly in our church right now. So thank you so much, Ethan. Yeah.
It's an honor, for sure.
All right. Well, I guess we'll let you go and be with those girls, unless you have anything else, Pastor Dan, for Ethan. Any business you got to do?
No, I think we're just waiting to hear from Pastor Brackett with the Senate, and then excited to interview and hopefully come to a consensus on a candidate and bring it forward to the congregation. So that's where we're at, and we're just grateful, I think, for everybody's prayers, and ask the congregation to continue to kind of surround this whole process in prayer, because that's a big part, I think, of discernment when you're calling a new pastor. But yeah, grateful for Ethan's leadership. He's done a phenomenal job with that call committee and really utilizing the gifts of that group. So excited to see what's in store for us coming ahead.
Yeah, that's one thing I maybe overlooked, but within the people in the congregation come up to myself and other members of the committee and saying, like, "Hey, thank you so much for what you're doing for us. Thank you so much for this." Like, oh yeah, like that's a nice reminder that's just not about what we're doing inside that room when we're breaking down the MSP. It's about we're representing others, and so that we can have, and take on the voices of people in the congregation, because we've had people had said things to us about, like, "Hey, about this here for this person," or whatever it may be. And like, yeah, that's great. And that's all things that's for feedback. Because I mentioned earlier, you want to do it right, and you want to get it right, and make sure that we continue our church moving down the path that we are, forging on for the years to come.
Thank you so much, Ethan. So you enjoy the evening with those little girls.
Yeah, thanks guys for the opportunity. Take care.
Yep. Thanks, Ethan.
Yeah.
Wow, huh? Yeah. Lot going on, and yeah, a lot of process since Pastor Kevin has left us, and yet, ever since then it just keeps moving along, and God keeps leading. We said when he was elected bishop, it felt like, the wind of the Holy Spirit had just blown a door open, and it just feels like that wind keeps blowing here, and not exactly sure where it's leading us, but I do think we're being led. So, and I think that was what Ethan shared, was just we have a whole group of people that are discerning that and praying about it, and our congregation as well. So
yeah, and I think it's hard sometimes to be patient in all of that. I think, and I had the benefit of having a father who did hundreds of call processes over 2 decades. And the one thing that he talked about talking about with call committees more than anything was to help them realize the amount of time that it takes to do a call process well. And that's always a challenge because we're anxious to get that new next leader in. We're anxious, I know you and I are anxious to get that third full-time person on the staff, but we also chose when we started this that we were gonna use some of the gifts in the congregation to help fill in what that pastor would do and not do the interim piece this time because we felt confident that we could move things forward. So it's always a balance there of being patient but also being eager and just holding on to that spirit as it leads us forward, right, into the future.
That's right. Yeah, and when we're in the midst of it, it feels long, but on the other hand, we just celebrated our 150th anniversary. So, this is just a little tiny piece of all that Trinity has been and will be. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and what a great anniversary celebration it was. I mean, I think those that were a part of the 31st, the 30th and 31st, but particularly the 31st with the big music that happened on that morning and the meal that happened afterwards. And it was just so much fun to be able to culminate the anniversary in a way that felt a little bit closer to the kinds of things that we planned 2.5 years ago. Because there were so many things in the buildup, going back to the kickoff really being the car cruise and the dedication of the building, and that happening so differently from the way that we imagined it would, but it was fun nonetheless, but definitely not what we had originally planned. And then having like the courtyard concert and having the special offering and the build day for Habitat for Humanity, and the directory happening a little bit differently than we expected, and doing the videos, looking back on the core values each month. I mean, all of those things were really good, but it was definitely a year of feeling like it wasn't quite what we had planned. It felt really good to me to do some of those things, having a full worship schedule, having the meal downstairs, having the remembrances from the former pastors, which I thought were fantastic.
Yeah.
Listening to them tell stories.
For the 140th, we expected them to come to us, but because of COVID, we asked them to send a video, and it's almost more, I don't know, it's something that we can share with everybody. You didn't have to be in the room to hear what they had to say. We now have a video recording of that everybody can enjoy. So
yeah, and if people missed that, if people missed it, they really should go to either our YouTube page or our Facebook page and find the anniversary videos and look at the pastor's greetings, because I think there were 7 or 8 that submitted videos, but each of them I thought covered in a lot of ways almost the last 50 to 60 years in the stories that they told and the people that they talked about. And it would definitely be worth your while if you're a person that has interest in Trinity's history and past. And even if you're new and just curious to kind of know a little bit more about what has shaped this community, those stories are not a bad place to start.
Yeah. No, they were great stories. I was just recently in a women's Bible study where Cleo and Pastor Steve's story from that video came up again. So yeah, even if you don't know the history, it's a kind of a fun story to hear. Yeah.
So so grateful for the anniversary committee and all the work that they did to plan these last couple of years. They just did a fantastic job. And then 4 days after that, we were in another really large event and another thing that I think felt pretty good to do in a manner that we're used to doing it, even if it was a little bit different. And that was the Scandinavian Bazaar that happened the following Thursday.
Haven't we been on a roll of big celebrations? Yeah, between the 150th and then the return of the bazaar to home again after being off site for 2 years with construction and then canceled last year. So yeah, it was a great opportunity for people to come together. I saw some people that I haven't seen through this whole time, so that was beautiful. we got to do it, quite honestly. And yes, once again, similar story, not the full thing that we thought, we've always done, but yet we did it. It was a beautiful celebration. We had a meal, we had the coffee, we had the baked goods, we had the crafts, we had the gifts, the books, and more importantly, we had the fellowship of people not only coming on Wednesday evening and Thursday, and people coming from North Iowa saying, oh, thank you for doing this, but all that camaraderie that goes on and with the volunteers making it happen. So it was a beautiful event, in my opinion. And we maybe had a few less people attend, obviously, because of the precautions that some people are taking. But at least the way the numbers are coming in, it looks like it's a very similar year to past years in terms of the amount of proceeds, which, if people don't know, that we give away the entire amount of the proceeds of the Scandinavian Bazaar to our partners in ministry in North Iowa, which I think is another beautiful testimony for who we are as a servant congregation.
I always like to lift that up because even at the bazaar itself, I was talking with some members who didn't realize that, because I think part of it is that so many congregations do these kinds of events as a way to help support their own ministry, which is beautiful and right and wonderful. But I've always thought that's one of the most amazing things about the legacy of the bazaar, is that we don't keep that money for Trinity's own ministries, but we give it away to other partners, people that are not a part of this specific congregation's ministry. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I had that conversation with a long-term member of Trinity around something related to the bazaar, and they were like, well, yeah, but I want these proceeds to go to the community. I went, well, they all go, all of the bazaar proceeds go to the community. Like,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Trinity doesn't keep them? Yeah.
Yeah, and that it's thousands of dollars. I mean, it's
Yeah.
only a 6-hour, 8-hour, depending on how you count, event, but that it's always over $10,000 that they raise in that
Yeah,
time.
and it is again. I'll dangle that little one, and it is again.
Yeah, how often are you getting asked about the dollar amount? Because I know that's always a thing, right? Of just our
Right.
own little kind of self-marker. How did we do this
Yeah,
year? How did we
yeah.
do it?
But recently there was a conversation with not the women, the men, who said to me, but it's not the dollar amount, it's the fellowship. And I thought,
Yeah,
yes, that's right.
yeah.
It's not the
Yeah, which you have always lifted up. It's as much about the event and what that does for us as a church and what it does for the wider community that's coming
Yeah.
together. That is so much a part of our mission, right? As a
Right,
church,
right.
to provide
So,
that thing.
I'll just give my pitch. If there's a new member or somebody that's never been to the bazaar before, and you think this is a weird Scandinavian thing and I don't care, it really is about that bonding experience that we have. It is unique in the number of people that involves and the kind of bonding experience that has nothing to do with whether you're Scandinavian or you get any of these, weird foods that we eat, like kroomkaka and covering,
Right.
So,
Yeah, exactly. Anybody can roll left or right. Anybody can. No, I did like the suggestion I heard this year again of maybe that there should be like bratwurst and sauerkraut on the corner outside, and then maybe we can get maybe some burritos and empanadas. And I thought, yeah, let's make this a global food fair. Like that would be awesome, right?
that's right. There has been some competing Germans, I know, thinking that they need to be represented.
And, maybe something for the future, right?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Wouldn't that be fun? Someday in the future, it's an international festival. I love that. Oh, so, well, yeah, that's, we've had a lot of big events, but quite honestly, in a normal year, the big event would be coming in Advent and Christmas coming. So here we are in November thinking holidays are upon us. So what do you want to say about Christmas and Advent, Pastor Dan?
I am super excited about the preaching series, first of all, and the overall theme for Advent. And I cannot take any credit for it. This is all Pastor Kathy, but this idea of having some characters from the Bible. We've done a lot of monologues through the years, especially special seasons, Advent and Lent. But for this Advent, to think about and to have some characters brought into worship that we probably haven't often heard from, but that are so appropriate for the season of Advent. This group of women that are listed in Matthew's genealogy, that genealogy that tells the line of descendants from the very beginning all the way down to Jesus, that Matthew does to start his gospel, his telling of the Jesus story, and to lift up the women, because the women are such fascinating characters, right, in this. And this series that you've put together called Women of the Promise. You want to talk a little bit about that and about what makes them so unique?
Yeah, I mean, I have always been fascinated. I don't like genealogies, and I definitely am one of those people that will skip over them when it's the reading in the Bible. But I've always been fascinated by Matthew's genealogy and who he chose to put in there as the women, because one, it's unusual that they are named at all. But then there had got to be some, more faithful, like, why isn't Sarah, Abraham's wife, named there? But who he chose to name are really kind of the outcasts, the women that didn't fit any of the profiles of who you would expect to be a part of that legacy. And I think that's the beautiful thing about their stories, particularly, is that it says that every one of us is part of a bigger story of God's plan for redemption. Every one of us has a place in this story. And you might think, oh, I'm not good enough, or, I don't have the right lineage, or whatever kind of not enough messages we give to ourselves sometimes. And then we have these beautiful stories of women that live that and never would have imagined
Yeah.
they were part
Yeah, right.
of
They'd be
this
as shocked as anybody.
that they were waiting for.
Yeah.
How could their little piece in their little world? And I just think, oh man, sometimes I think my little piece in my little world isn't that significant, or doesn't make that big of an impact, but it does.
It's such a beautiful message at this time of year, especially, right? As we celebrate a Savior who was born in very unexpected, humble ways. We always talk about that at Christmas time, but to think about everything that led up to Jesus' birth and how unexpected. I mean, it's really God's MO, right? In Scripture, is to do things in really unexpected, very, to the eyes of the world, very strange sort of ways, choosing to work through the people that God chooses to work through. But it is a theme all the way through the Bible. So
for sure.
It's going to be great. And to have not you and I doing any of these, I mean, clearly not me, but not you either, doing these, but having other staff and some other members doing these monologue portrayals each weekend. I think it's going to be really great.
Yeah, 4 very talented women. We've got Becky Ellsbrand, Marcy Colvin, Janaea Everest, and Michelle Murray, each taking a weekend to portray one of these women. So it should be very well done. I think it will be informative, but also inspiring to all of us in the season of Advent. As we anticipate Christmas.
So we've got the Women of the Promise, and that's going to kick off the first weekend in Advent, which is right after Thanksgiving. That right. Saturday, Sunday after Thanksgiving, we'll be into it and into the Advent season.
Yeah.
And then we're going to start right away in that first Wednesday after that first weekend. We're going to start with Hold an Evening Prayer, that service of word and music. It's about 20 minutes or so that we do up in the sanctuary, kind of turn the lights down and light some candles and sing this really beautiful, familiar piece to many each Wednesday at 6 throughout the season of Advent. And so we've got that going on. And then there's a couple special events happening. The cantata, Dr. Matt Gender is actually writing a cantata that is going to look at the history of and the symbolism of the Advent wreath. And that's going to be the focus. That's going to be December 4th, Saturday, December 4th at 5 o'clock. And that's always a special night. That's really great to be able to do that again, to have the cantata and some of our musicians at Trinity featured as a part of that. And then we have something we've never had, at least that I can remember, in that Una Voces, one of the really fine vocal groups in Mason City, is doing a concert at Trinity on Friday, December 17th. And so Dr. Gender is involved in that. He's been working with them, and we've got a number of members who sing in Una Voces, but really exciting to have them come in for the holiday season to do a concert here.
And that's lessons and carols, right? Because I think we've done that, but to have Una Voces doing that in the season of Christmas, I think that'll be beautiful.
Yeah, and so I imagine there's going to be a participatory part in that if you come and you're a singer yourself, or even if you just like to do the some of the familiar carols, that might be your night if you want to hit that before we get to Christmas Eve.
Right.
Yeah.
What's
And then
the Christmas schedule? We better
Christmas
talk
schedule.
Christmas schedule. Yeah, let that out for people.
Yeah, so we're going to go back this year, this December, to a full in-person schedule, kind of like we did with the weekend schedule. It feels right for us at this point to offer as many opportunities for people to come in person as possible so that we can spread people out. We know that Christmas Eve is one of those nights we typically pack it in, and it's probably not the worst thing that we'll have enough room to be able to maybe be a little bit less packed, but certainly want to invite anyone and everyone that wants to come and worship in person to do so. 1:30, 4 o'clock, 5:30, and 10:30 on Christmas Eve are our service times. The 1:30 and the 10:30 traditional services. The difference, the 10:30 is candlelight service and has the musical prelude that starts at 10 o'clock. And then the two middle services, the 4 and the 5:30, have kind of been a little friendlier for people of all ages, we'll say. We've sometimes called them the family services. We always do a children's sermon at both of those. And they often are better times, I think, for families that are trying to get together for a meal or something like that. And so the only difference between those two is the 5:30 has communion and the 4 o'clock doesn't. So the 4 o'clock's a little bit shorter. 5:30 has that ability to be able to receive communion on Christmas Eve. So
Yeah.
So that's, and we're going to live stream. I believe the plan is to try to live stream the 4 o'clock and the 10:30. So that if people do want to join us online, that they'll be able to do that at those times or later on.
And then of course, the unusual thing about this year is that falls on a Friday, the Christmas Eve. And so then there's the weekend right after that, right? So the 25th is Saturday. So we're not going to have a Christmas Day morning service, but we are then going to move to our weekend worship service, which would be a regular Saturday night worship service at 5. But then, given the fact that it is Christmas weekend and all that's going on, just one service on December 26th, Sunday, December 26th at 9:30. So, and that will be not Christmas, it'll be the day after Christmas. And
Christmas season, but not Christmas Day.
Right, yeah. So I think I looked at the lectionary text briefly, and I think that it is Jesus in the temple, I believe. So he goes from birth to 12, just like that. Boom.
In 2 days time, 1 day time. Yeah.
Okay.
Only the lectionary can do that to us, right?
Right. So we'll see if we do that. But anyway, yeah, it should be a good weekend celebration. And like you say, I think offering many different options for ways that people and family want to worship and feel comfortable worshiping in these times. So
yeah, absolutely. And hopefully with all the music and all of the joy and all of the candlelight and all of those, things that we have so come to love and so missed being able to do in person last year. It's really exciting to think about Christmas too, just like it has been with these last few big events. It's exciting to think about doing Christmas again.
Christmas with people, yeah,
Yeah,
but still offering it live stream for people for whom that might work well too.
yeah, exactly.
Good.
Yeah,
I don't know, should we both just sigh right now? Oh,
definitely.
okay, call process, anniversary, bazaar, Christmas.
Have people been asking you how you're doing? Have you been getting that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I think they have. Yeah, how are you doing? Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. So,
yeah,
yeah, and depending upon the day, I mean, my new mantra, I mean, quite honestly, is, my visual is that I'm a hamster on a hamster wheel. And I'm running as fast as I possibly can on that little wheel. I don't know that I'm making any progress, but these things just keep happening and I just keep a running.
yeah, it has felt like we were talking with staff earlier today. I mean, I really feel like it's, for me, the image has been kind of boulders leading up the side of a steep hill that we're trying to kind of get over this peak. This fall has been so busy, having brought some COVID time, new things into the mix with technology, things like this, right, that we've been doing, but now we wanted to hang on to, but then adding all of the in-person stuff back, adding full schedule, adding big events like the installation and 2 confirmation classes and the 150th anniversary and so on and so, and bazaar coming back and all those things. And it just feels like each one you're just like, oh, okay, gotta get past this. Okay, gotta get past this. And yeah, people have been asking, how are you guys doing it? Which is so cool, that people care about us enough to ask how we're doing. And I think people recognize anybody who's been in a situation where you lose somebody on your team and they know that means other people have to pick stuff up. That's really kind. And I think there is something to that. I mean, I'm tired at times, and I'm, definitely thinking and carrying more pieces than what has been typical. But I continue to feel very blessed by your collegiality, the fact like we talked about, we've been through this, and I think we've worked together long enough that we know how to pick up the pieces together and hopefully not drop too many of them on the ground.
Right.
There's always stuff that's not getting done that we wish that we could, but and also just having a really supportive leadership. The council has been fantastic, having this staff team that we get to work with, right? Some
Such a
longtime
talented
folks,
group of people.
just
Wow.
unbelievable staff team that we have, and people stepping up in new and different ways in the congregation, which has been just fantastic too. And knowing that we'll get there
Yeah.
together, we'll eventually get off the wheel, we'll eventually get to the top of whatever hill it is we're climbing, and then that God is so faithful in the midst of all of that is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. I feel bad because there's some pieces of ministry that I really love that I'm not doing right now. And I miss that. I miss seeing, people and doing the visitation that really is what feeds my soul. But everything has a season, right? And we're just in that season. But yeah, we'll get through this. And my goodness, the things that you did for the 150th anniversary, I think behind the scenes, nobody knows all of the time and the effort and the work that you have put in for, quite honestly, years, in terms of the Capitol appeal and the construction and, let alone, I mean, just, we talked about the videos. You wrote the script for every one of those videos. What a beautiful gift that we received in that history and lifting that up. And so there's just so many pieces of your gifted leadership that have brought us to this point. So I feel so fortunate to just even be a part of Trinity right now in this time and place that, yeah, for all the busyness, I feel more blessed in the midst of it than anything else. And yeah, we'll get through it, we always do, and God is faithful.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, for the people in the congregation to know that even if they've seen little shifts in how we're spending our time, like for instance with visiting or those kinds of things, that we still care so deeply about each person, and we care so deeply about the ministry of this congregation, and for us to all care for it together and to help one another is really the key right now. That if there are things, needs to be met or new possibilities, those kind of things, that we do it together, right? And we figure out how to get through it together, because that's what communities of faith are all about in the end. And yeah, I just appreciate, probably in this time especially, all of the people that we get to work with, you included, who care so much about God's work here and about God's people here, and that in the end, that makes it all good.
Right.
It makes it all good. So
and it's a reminder, I think, for the two of us who, as pastors, sometimes you get the idea that it is all of our work, and it isn't. Right.
Yeah.
It's about how we empower and send out, and that Jesus sends all of us out as disciples. And so sometimes when you're in leadership in a church, people are thinking, okay, this is you and this is you. And then I go, and it's me and it's me. And then it's like, no, this is the work of the people. This is God's work. This is the Holy Spirit that continues to keep moving and rerouting all of us into new pathways that, maybe we didn't think we were ever going to go into, but can be blessed in the midst of it. So, yeah. It's a good season for all of that, to be thinking about it and the new beginnings and how God wants to go, and back to those Advent women, how we are a part of a bigger story, even and can serve God in ways we just never imagined by being faithful in our own individual lives. So.
Yeah, exactly. And how that's probably the same for everybody in all of their fields and in all of their activities and daily lives too, that there is that sense probably of a lot of folks right now of, oh, there's just not enough time, and but to think about God's presence and what God is up to in the midst of that, and what's really necessary and what's really crucial. And yeah, that's a wonderful reflection.
Well, maybe that's enough for them today. So thank you to everybody who's joined us for Coffee with the Pastors. It's always a joy for us to spend some time with you. And quite honestly, we never know where this conversation is going to go either. So glad that you joined us for this journey today, and how the Holy Spirit continues to lead us in conversation, lead us together, and leads all of you in your daily lives. So blessings to you.
Thanks, everybody.